On a cold, rainy night, Singapore Sling, a private detective with a bullet lodged in his shoulder, witnesses a hideous crime. Now that SS has ended up in a lavish mansion on the outskirts of the town, has his fruitless quest to track down long lost Secretary Laura come to an end? But in the village of depravity, two decadent vipers, the wonderfully demented mother and daughter, await the weary investigator, eager to plunge their unsuspecting night visitor into a degrading purgatory of perversion, torture, and murder. However, SS has nothing to lose, and if he has to give his life to shed light on the naughty mystery of the missing woman, so be it. Will the infernal duo and the cruel pleasure game set SS free? Can Singapore Sling, the man who loved a corpse, find redemption in death's cold embrace? A mother and a daughter live in a large home, playing games of love domination and reenacting the murder of various servants that they have hired and then killed. A private detective called Singapore Sling comes searching for Laura, a woman he is fixated on but whom they have killed. They imprison him using poor guy as a love toy and torturing him. Singapore Sling by Nikos Nikolaidis is easily one of the most demented horror films ever made. This extremely weird piece of film noir is loaded with erotic regurgitation, incest, bondage, bizarre love, and sadistic violence. The relationship between the mother and her daughter is extremely bizarre to say the least. The acting is absolutely awesome and the performances are incredibly real. The atmosphere is simply insane and wonderfully nightmarish. There is also a good amount of sickening violence and gore, including the most nerve-wracking dinner sequence I have ever seen. Singapore Sling is shot in exquisite black and white, and classical music play on the soundtrack, and this makes it even more unsettling. In one truly demented scene, the male lead is tied down to the bed. ETC pedal jam against his forehead and he is left convulsing in shock while the mother rides him and then moves up to urinate on his face. So if you are a fan of twisted cinema like Visit a Q, Shallow or Sweet Movie, give this gross out masterpiece a look. Going into Singapore Sling, I knew almost nothing about it. I knew that it was supposed to be somewhat extreme, and that's about it. But what was delivered was nothing I could ever have expected. Singapore Sling is about a mother and daughter duo who have gone completely nut after father died. Not saying that they weren't nut before, but I am guessing father wouldn't have approved of everything they are now doing, even though father was a murderer. The story revolves around this duo and a man they name Singapore Sling. Singapore is an investigator on the trail of a woman named Laura, who is missing and presumed dead. He followed a trail of clues and ended up finding these two wacko. The duo then hold the injured Singapore hostage in their home, while pretty much just trying to make him go nut. But it is really just their way of playing and having fun. Having fun for them consists of torture, love, role-playing, messy eating, and the list goes on and on. The movie goes like this for quite a while, just the viewer getting to know these ladies. Singapore Sling is one of the strangest flick I have ever seen. and also one of the most well made. Shot in a film noir type way, reminiscent of old style classic and combined with stylish, beautiful shot and fantastic music. The movie look and sound incredible. But the high praise should go to the actor involved. They were fantastic, especially the daughter, talking about a role she was born to play, hot chick too. Singapore Sling's only problem is that it is a little long. It's a movie you definitely should watch more than once to fully digest what they are throwing at you. The acting alone is worth another watch. And it's not really a movie to fast forward either. It's a movie to soak in. Singapore Sling should be a must-see for any serious film lover out there. It's too unique not to be. What happened to good films made totally against the grain? What if Botticelli's Venus was painted urinating into an acolyte's mouth? In cinema, such work can find their way to late night screening, safely past the bedtime of anyone who might object or find them too offbeat. Such was the birth of films that include the Rocky Horror Show and Eraserhead, or films openly shocking like Pink Flamingos. Late nighters may be rubbish, or they may be the last bastion of artists that are out of sync with popular and critical taste. At the time of writing, the film house in Edinburgh runs season of psychotronic film, one of the many subgenres at the midnight masses of secretive cinephile. Our film was fittingly introduced by a masked with a heavy European accent. How many films, he asked, satisfy both your voyeuristic and artistic taste? He goes on to mention the awards Singapore Sling has won in its native Greece. The promise of kinky love, even with vomiting, incest and torture, sounds so much more respectable if it has subtitle and a dialogue in Greek, French and English, and a cinematography award so we can make polite conversation about the nice photography. But before we write it off as art house exploitation, let me add that the plot machination and breakthrough acting devices alone, that blend character, voiceover, narrating to the camera and rehearsing to the camera, put it in an exceptional class of movie. And the cinematography would be Oscar worthy were it not for the subject matter. Without giving too much away, Singapore Sling is basically film noir with other elements forcefully mixed. The story concerns a dodgy private detective in love with a dead woman. If that sounds familiar, it's meant to be. The woman is Laura Q, the plotline from the Otto Preminger classic, and she is hauntingly described by the wistful Julie London version of the eponymous song. Singapore Sling is just the nickname that the detective earned from a couple of female sociopaths, one of whom is worryingly like his dead Laura. The black and white photography leaves us open-mouthed from the outset. Lush, atmospheric shadows are thrown together as our senses are pounded by a thunderstorm. Rain fight with flora, ricochet of surfaces, drenches the faces and borders of two women who, with Hamlet-like grandeur, dig a grave. You feel drenched, and each scene in Singapore Sling is composed with equally mesmerizing beauty. Baroque magnificence and delicate taste insulate us from the nastiness to follow. Murder is a parlor game in the old days. Father would murder the servant, the girl would only have to plant flower. Our female protagonists are mother and daughter. They reenact murder as a refined, sadomasochistic, and incestuous ritual. Who is Laura? Was she just a sewing maid? Who is in the picture hanging on the wall? Singapore Sling is drawn into the deadly web after knocking on the door. A bullet wound in his shoulder. He feigned a degree of distractedness to give himself time. At what point does the torture make his loss of mental capacity real? While this is not a film to watch if you have a queasy stomach, our senses of revulsion is numb by being drawn into the twisted aesthetic of the protagonist. I'm not kidding, they tie him up, give him electric shock, and use him for love before urinating on his face. Later, his abuser realistically makes herself vomit over him as she orgasms. Are you okay with that? If you are still reading, let's get back to the cinematic technique. Singapore Sling occasionally narrate a voiceover, stoically treating it as just another case. Our other two characters go one further. They will narrate what is happening or about to happen to the camera. At one point, Mom rehearses dramatic lines in French and English. For a coming role play or for our benefit? Whichever it is, the barrier between audience, character and actor is broken down. When we are simultaneously being inundated with extremely visceral and unsettling material, the effect is challenging. Cocteau once said that the film is a petrified fountain of thought. We might want to analyze the plot, the Freudian symbolism, even the technique. But we are helplessly frozen in the terrible vision and swept along by a smorgasbord of extreme love fetish that makes the story of O look like Gone with the Wind. This makes it even harder work piecing together mystery when all is revealed. There are a number of interpretations to the central mystery. One of the first things I did was order a copy of Preminger's Laura from Amazon to re-examine the detailed reference. At the Thessaloniki Film Festival, Singapore Sling won a triplet of Best Actress, Best Cinematography and Best Director. Although as deliberately shocking as say Pink Flamingo or Thundercrack, it oozes style in equal proportion to perversion. British censor promptly banned it. The director called it a comedy with some element of ancient Greek tragedy, but reacted to the ban by realizing it may be depict an underlying malice in all of us, a darker side we try to ignore, a side that unveiled without substance, the stuff hidden in dream, like Laura, the face in the misty light, that you can never quite recall, as our songs say. Love it or hate it, a policy of late night screening on rare movie is something that keep independent cinema alive. Singapore Sling may not be to your taste, but such willingness to dare keep the door open for a wider selection of film than can be found anywhere outside of film festival. It's difficult to categorize the black and white surreal experience that is Singapore Sling. The film probably fall into the midnight movie category with films like Eraserhead, Nightmare's celluloid journey that leave you wondering, did I really see that? As you wake in the cold light of the morning. Singapore Sling is beautifully shot. Every scene is lit perfectly and look amazing. From the opening scene, where two rain-drenched and mud-caked scantily clad women dispose of the sofa, The tone is set for over-the-top wildness, erotic, sickening, funny and shocking. Sling is a taboo-busting tale of incest, murder, fruit abuse, and insanity. Acts of love, debauchery are thrown at the viewer almost casually. The actress who plays the daughter is classically beautiful and delivers some of the most bizarre scenes I have ever witnessed. This is an actress who's trusting the director to deliver a solid film. I would say that this trust is well placed. Nikos Nikolaidis has produced a unique movie that is impossible to forget and that linger in the mind like a fever induced bad dream. For those of a nervous disposition and fragile constitution, this is a movie that should be avoided like the plague. Fans of transgressive cinema, however, will probably love this movie and appreciate its dark slice of perverse comedy. The reflexive urge to label any film that flaunt its own sense of willful ambiguity, as in the vein of Lynch, is an overused cliché in the realm of armchair film criticism. It's all too easy to overstate the paranoid influence of Polanski on films that take a maddeningly subjective approach to their character. And it's easier yet to label a movie released in 1990 yet utilizing gorgeous black and white cinematography as a satirical noir counterpart to Billy Wilder's Sunset Boulevard and the black humor psychological horror of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. But Singapore Sling, true to its alcohol blended title, crib all of these seemingly desperate influences into a bizarre original that, while not yielding the most emotionally resonant result, offer a hypnotic descent into a gradually escalating nightmare. Greek writer-director Nikos Nikolaidis offer a simple setup revealed through the title character's voice-over narration. For 3 years, he has been searching for a woman named Laura and an injury. Find him on the doorstep of a deranged mother and daughter, who proceed to torture and degrade our protagonist in all manner of revolting ways. Singapore Sling is well aware of its capacity to disgust and provoke. But what keeps the proceeding fascinating are performances that take on an inspired madness that convinces the viewer that their actions are consistent with their unglued personalities and not mere soy torture fodder in the hostel mold. Complementing Nikolaidis' madhouse aesthetic is the black and white cinematography, where one beautifully conceived shot follows the next and give the proceeding a paradoxically classy look despite the sharp contrast with the subject matter. While not without pretension, Singapore Sling straddles the line between art house and grindhouse with gleefully made abandon its unapologetic weirdness a breath of fresh air. It doesn't get much more bizarre than this. To sum it up simply, Singapore Sling is a work of extreme cinema, featuring all manner of things from sadomasochism to incest, but it's shot in a style reminiscent of the classic film noir from the golden age of cinema. The two styles offset each other constantly, and this gives the film an extremely surreal atmosphere as well as a completely unique style that ensures Singapore Sling is nothing like any other film ever made. The film was made in Greece, which makes it almost unique in its own right, as Greece isn't a country famous for filmmaking. The plot focuses on a detective who is looking for a girl named Laura. One night he stumbled upon two women burying a body, and we are introduced to what has to be one of the most upbeat mother and daughter in cinema. We then follow the daughter as she details the thing her and her mother get up to before the weary detective, who is given the name Singapore Sling, stumble into the pair's home and end up becoming involved in more insane game. The film is shot in beautiful black and white, and director Nikolaidis does an excellent job of making the film as picturesque as possible. In fact, the film is so damn pretty that even morbidly sick practices such as mother having lesbian love with her daughter don't seem quite so grotesque when seen in this film. The film only features 3 performers, but it never gets boring even though the film runs for over 110 minutes. The director somehow managed to keep things interesting despite the fact that the film often retread similar ground. Much of the credit for the film must go to Michele and Meredyth Herold, who both provide brilliant performances as the mother and daughter central duo. Panos Thanosalis is a good also as the title character, but he remains silent for most of the film and never get a chance to fully impress. The film plays out well throughout, and it all boils down to a suitable sick final which give credence to both its pornographic and film noir style. Overall, Singapore Sling is a fabulous piece of celluloid which need to be experienced by everyone who consider themselves a fan of cinema. A strange collision of film noir, performance art, and Sikhian melodrama, Singapore Sling is an absolute must for fans of extreme filmmaking.